morning to you. You. Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning. Good morning. Won't you share with a friend or two? Good morning. Good morning to you. You. Good morning. Good morning to you. And many more, and many more, and many more. Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to Daring Dialogues. I'm your host today, Shantae Charles, and we're going to jump right into the message in the text today because it is a short show. And it's going to be a short show on Thursdays for a while due to a change in my schedule. So let's hop in. The new book that we are checking out today is entitled The Spirit of Justice: True Stories of Faith, Race, and Resistance by Dr. Jamar Tisby, best-selling author of The Color of Compromise, another book that we looked at many seasons ago on our podcast. I want to read you the cover statement before we get into the main reading. This is Mr. Jamar Tisby. Okay. He is the author of the best-selling book, The Color of Compromise, and the award-winning book, How to Fight Racism. He is a historian who studies race, religion, and social movements in the 20th century, and he serves as a professor at Simmons College of Kentucky, a historically Black college. He's the founding co-host of Pass the Mic podcast and has written featured in the Washington Post, the Atlantic, Time, and New York Times. He's a frequent commentator on outlets such as NPR and CNN and speaks nationwide on the topics of racial justice, U.S. history, and Christianity. We seem to be fighting many of the same battles against racism as we did in decades past, even centuries past. Just when it seems like we've made progress, opposition forces us backward. Yet in every age and against the most daunting odds, people have found the will to resist injustice. Where does this strength come from? How can we have the same hope and resilience now? In his study of U.S. history, Jamar Tisby noticed a pattern of endurance in the lives of people such as Murray Evers Williams and many others throughout the centuries-long struggle for Black freedom. Time and again, people endured the most horrendous effects of racism, but somehow they kept going. How do people see the worst of humanity, experience the most demoralizing setbacks, and still find the resolve to work for change? How do they not give up? It is the spirit of justice. So we're going to tap in and we're going to be learning today. I like the fact that he dedicates his work to all those who are weary and heavy laden. Be encouraged. And he's got a couple of images in the book that I'll be showing you. This is the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum. And then he has a picture of Murray Evers Williams. We're only going to be reading a few pages today as we get started. This is chapter 1. He does not have an introduction. It just jumps right into the chapter. Murray Evers Williams had salt and pepper black hair cropped short, and she wore a patterned red and black scarf draped across her shoulders like a queen's robe. She held herself with such regal dignity that the wheelchair she sat upon seemed to become a throne. She spoke with a deliberateness and profundity that made us all lean forward to catch every utterance. We were in Jackson, Mississippi, I was part of a group of journalists and writers who had been granted a private audience with this legend of the civil rights movement on the grand opening day of the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum on December 9th, 2017. The occasion was packed with political baggage. The president at the time, number 45, who is now 47, had hinted that he might attend the general opening of the museum. His presence there as a man who had often trafficked in racist tropes and prejudices represented an affront to the museum's mission to accurately tell the racist history of the state of Mississippi and be part of the effort to move beyond it. Notable invitees such as Congressman Benny Thompson of Mississippi and John Lewis of Georgia declined to attend because of Trump's presence. Myrlie Evers Williams, however, still spoke at the event. At 84 years old, she still sounded a note of hope in her public remarks. Going through the museums, I wept because I felt the blows, I felt the bullets, I felt the tears, I felt the cries. But I also sensed the hope that dwelt in all of those people, she said. Her dedication to justice and interracial fellowship was improbable given what she had experienced. Most people know Myrlie Evers Williams as the widow of Medgar Evers, the NAACP field secretary of Mississippi, who was gunned down in his driveway by a white supremacist. Born in 1925 in Decatur, Mississippi, Medgar Evers became the first field secretary for the Mississippi branch of the NAACP in 1954. The Mississippi movement had been persistent, but lacked unified leadership until Evers came to the helm. Evers helped organize Black people in the wake of the Brown versus Board of Education decision. After the lynching of Emmett Till in 1955, Evers dressed up as a field hand to blend in and put people at ease as he gathered eyewitness accounts. He championed people like James Meredith, helping Meredith get admitted to the University of Mississippi and organize economic boycotts. Medgar and Myrlie met at college in Mississippi, and they became co-laborers in the NAACP and civil rights activism. Both of them shared a strong sense of justice, a deep affection for one another, and an abiding faith in God. In the aftermath of her husband's death, Myrlie Evers Williams became a renowned activist in her own right. She moved her family to California, where she twice ran for Congress. She led the NAACP as the chairperson of their board of directors for several years. She delivered the invocation at Barack Obama's second presidential inauguration and received numerous accolades for her contributions to civil rights along the way. Now she was back in her home state of Mississippi, addressing crowds at the museum that exhibited the same gun used to murder her husband more than half a century prior. After the public portion of the grand opening, she took time to answer our questions in a smaller gathering. One journalist asked her about the state of race relations today. I'm glad I was recording because her words helped inspire this book. I see something today that I had hoped I would never see again. That is prejudice, hatred, negativism that comes from the highest points across America, she told us. Then, with the candor that comes with old age, she said, and I found myself asking Medgar in the conversations that I have with him, is this really what's happening again in this country? And asking for guidance because I don't mind admitting this to the press. I'm a little weary at this point. At that moment, I fully expected her to expound on the weariness of fighting for racial justice for decades, to vent about her frustrations with people who still oppose the laws and policies that would move us closer to racial progress, to say that she was passing the torch to another generation and that she had earned her rest. But she took her comments in a different direction, one that pointed to the strength and resolve of the staunchest defenders of justice. But it's something about the spirit of justice that raises up like a war horse. That horse that stands with its back sunk in and hears that bell. I like to say the bell of freedom. And all of a sudden it becomes straight and the back becomes stiff and you become determined all over again. Here was a woman who had endured decades of exclusion and injustice, punctuated by the assassination of her own husband. She had fought and labored her entire life for change. Yet, even in the ninth decade of her life, she still had the resolve to continue the struggle for racial justice. I couldn't fathom it. I couldn't make it make sense. My mind lingered on a phrase that she used, the spirit of justice. In the years since I have heard that speech, those words, I've often pondered their significance. As I've studied history, I've found a pattern of endurance, not only in her life, but in the centuries long struggle for Black freedom. Time and again, people endured the most horrendous results of racism, but somehow they kept going. They kept working, loving, fighting, and moving toward a better future. How? How do people see the worst of humanity, experience these setbacks, and still find the resolve to work for change? What keeps them going? There is a relentless drive in human beings, both inward and transcendent, that demands dignity and propels our progress. It is the spirit of justice. It is the conviction to continue the struggle no matter the odds or the obstacles. It is the heartbeat of people who hunger and thirst for righteousness. It will not concede. It will not let the evil of racism and inhumanity prevail. It will not quit until justice rolls down like a river. This book probes the depths of history and asks, what manner of people are these who courageously confront racism instead of being complicit with it? And what can we learn from their example, their suffering, their methods, and their hope? The spirit of justice is a force for liberation. It inspires strength in those who understand that they must play a part in making the world kinder and more equitable. The spirit of justice animates action. It molds hearts and strengthens hands for the work of correcting oppression. It keeps weary feet moving on the protest path. It uplifts the souls of those persecuted for the sake of righteousness. It is finding your second, your third, your 50th wind in an age as an aged activist, pushing further for just a bit more progress. The spirit of justice is reflected in the human spirit, the indomitable will of oppressed people everywhere to rise up and throw off the burden of injustice. The spirit of justice is found in every culture, continent, and community. We see it expressed in those who struggle for freedom and continue to struggle against apartheid in South Africa, against colonialism in India, and labor exploitation in Mexico. It is the irrepressible instinct that says, I will not endure indignity. I will make you see my worth and you will treat me accordingly. For those who claim the Christian faith, one might understand the spirit of justice as the Holy Spirit. The indwelling spirit empowers the believer to do the work of loving God and loving neighbor. This struggle for justice encompasses both material and spiritual dimensions. As the Apostle Paul wrote long ago, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this world, dark world, and against spiritual forces of evil in the high place or heavenly realm. With the eyes of faith, one can see that the spirit of justice is not an impersonal force detached from the human experience, but the Spirit of God, who lives within the hearts of those who follow Christ. This is not to say that the work of justice can be accomplished only by Christians. People of any religion or none at all can and do pursue the common good from common grace, a blessing bestowed upon all of humanity. For followers of Jesus, the Spirit of justice grants them spiritual gifts to equip them for the work of redemption in the world. The Spirit supplies believers with spiritual armor to fight injustice. It enlivens and motivates the pursuit of all forms of justice because God hates injustice and seeks to correct oppression. The Spirit of justice is always at work to inspire followers of Christ to undertake acts of liberation and bear witness to the good news of their Savior. At the inauguration of his public ministry, Jesus said, the Spirit of the Lord is on me. That Spirit empowered him for his mission to do what? Proclaim freedom to the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of God's favor. That was Jesus' ministry. The spirit that abides in all who, because of their faith in Jesus, seek to follow his example and continue his mission. You cannot call yourself a follower of Jesus if you are not about the work of setting the oppressed free and proclaiming freedom for those in bondage. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. However, the work of the Spirit of justice is not confined to the past, nor is it the privilege of just a single group or individual. It belongs to all of us. We must learn to recognize the work of the Spirit of justice so we too can continue the struggle against racism in our generation. Next time that we pick up this book, we'll be looking at what history teaches us about the Spirit of justice. Um, but next week, we'll also be introducing you to the book on reparations. So we will be reading back and forth between these two first, and then we'll keep adding to our readings. All right. So next week, what history teaches us about the Spirit of justice, and we'll be introducing the other book on reparations. Check out the book. Check it out from your local library. Get it as a ebook if you want to read along with us. Um, and I think Libby app may also carry it, or invest in it like I did and purchase the book for your personal library. All right, we're going to have some talk back on the Spirit of justice. I'm going to send you the add-in link. All right, and hopefully, Pastor Ben, you'll be able to jump in on that link. We've got about a good 10, 12 minutes here to chop it up. And as we are waiting, I want you to think about, what does the Spirit of justice mean to you? He outlined some things here about it being reflected in our human spirit, it being reflected as a part of the will of the oppressed to rise up and to throw off the burden of injustice. I think that's a really good working definition. But tell me in the comments, what does the Spirit of justice mean to you? Good morning. Good morning. All right, there you go. How are you today?
I'm good. I can, okay. Hmm. I don't know where
I
to
don't know where
start.
to start. Well, let's start with the fact that
You know what? I guess I'll start.
I was gonna say, let's start with
I
the fact
guess
that
I'll.
Merle Evers was in her 90s and still saying, "I'm weary, for there's a fire on the inside of me that I'm not gonna stop seeking justice."
And
And
you
you
know,
know,
we're not
we're not
supposed to stop.
supposed to stop. Mm-hmm.
We're not
We're not
supposed to stop.
supposed to
And
stop.
as
And
he
as he
stated,
stated,
if
if
you
you
proclaim to be a
proclaim to be a
Christian,
Christian,
a
a
follower
follower
of the
of the
teachings of
teachings of
Christ,
Christ, mm-hmm,
you're
you're
supposed to be
supposed to be
fighting
fighting
against
against
oppression.
oppression. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to
You're
be
supposed to
fighting
be
against
fighting against
injustice.
injustice, not cheering it on.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Exactly. Not
Exactly.
cheering
Not
it
cheering
on.
it on.
But right
But
now we
right
have
now we
so
have
many
so
people
many people
cheering it
cheering
on,
it on,
and I have
and
no
I have
problem
no problem
calling them out.
calling them
Believe,
out.
believe that.
Believe that.
So many
So
people
many people
cheering it
cheering
on,
it on,
and
and
it's like
it's like
ridiculous. They
ridiculous.
call
They call
themselves
themselves
Christians,
Christians.
but
But
here's the
here's the
thing.
thing.
Here's the
Here's the
change that I'm
change that
seeing.
I'm seeing.
There are so
There are
many
so
people
many
now
people now
calling them out.
calling them out.
and telling them that you can't be a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking about evil people that don't proclaim to be Christians
Right.
are saying this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everybody is standing up and
So,
saying you are giving Christ a bad name.
hmm
Forget institution for a moment. You are giving Christ a bad name. You are giving God a bad name. Because
hmm
I have a few friends that are atheists that are now doing Sunday sermons by blog and preaching on Sundays. Okay, and they preaching. I'm gonna be honest. They preaching better than some preachers right now about injustice because they don't believe
hmm
in God for themselves, but they know what Christians teach. And so if you have, and God said that this was going to happen, they are an actual manifestation of what God said was going to happen in this decade. He said that even the atheists who don't believe me or don't believe in me were going to come forward to defend me. He told us
hmm
that a couple years ago. That's in writing. He said it's going to be atheists, people who don't even believe in me will stand up for my name because that's how bad it's going to get. And sure enough,
and it's that bad.
sure enough, it has gotten that bad. That even the atheists are like,
hmm
wait a minute, wait. Don't your book say, doesn't your book say not to do this to the poor, to the widow,
hmm
to the orphaned, to the hungry? Like, why are we having to tell you what your book says?
hmm
That's where we are right now. And
hmm
then you have people that say or that name the name of Christ, but you're making whole comedic videos as the government mocking the lives that you are taking away and disappearing and putting on planes and sending to cages. And some of these people have not heard from their family members. That was like the last time they saw them, and that was months ago. And you got the nerve to be making comical videos on government pages? Clearly, surely you don't think your God is winking at this. Surely you don't.
They probably do, which is probably why they keep doing what they're doing. Even the Satanists here,
Mm-hmm.
yet DeSantis is defying a court order.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying that he's not going to dismantle Alligator Alcatraz,
Oh, really?
and they're going to be bringing more people there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It goes back to what I said the other day. Rules for thee, but not for me. That's pretty much
hmm
what their philosophy is right now. Rules for thee, but not for me. Freedom
hmm
for me, but not for thee.
hmm
Increase of money for me and my family with this whole crypto business. How did you just add $5 billion to your family wealth? 5 billion, not 5 million. $5 billion.
hmm
That's not including the 3 billion that he's
hmm
already added for himself. So that's $8 billion, $8 billion that you've added to your personal wealth while stripping trillions of dollars from the Americans' taxpayers. I just want people to understand that.
hmm
And so there's a lot of embezzlement going on. That's the only thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing that makes sense. Is these people are literally embezzling the money from the government into their own pockets, siphoning it into their friends' pockets, their pockets. They'll split some more on the back end, but you're setting our government up for you're setting our nation up for a civil war, and you're posturing it as such. When you're trying to create
Mm-hmm.
a private police force, you're trying to federalize a private police force and make yourself chief of it. Um, that is no different than the Confederate Army. It's no different. You're just calling it a police force, but it's no different than the Confederate Army that decided to turn against its own government. And so while we live our lives and while we go about our business, I just want us to stay a little on the aware side that this is all happening in the background. Yes, I know people have to get up and go and work and take care of their children, take them to school, but I need you to also stay awake because things can turn
Mm-hmm.
very quickly, especially if you live in a state like Georgia, Texas, Florida. Who else I need to put on there?
Tennessee.
Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, North
Mm-hmm.
Carolina. North Carolina's governor is fighting back a little bit. What's the other place? There's another place that's deploying troops. Washington is resisting. They're added onto the resistance. Illinois is resisting. Maryland is resisting. California is resisting. I heard this morning a couple of minutes ago that Washington D.C. has now filed a lawsuit about the deployment there. So people are starting to wake up, um, but we all have a responsibility, as he said, and I'm closing. We all have a responsibility to maintain the spirit of justice in our own lives. I would say to people,
Mm-hmm.
don't. I know a lot is happening and it's happening in such speed. Don't allow yourself to get numbed to the injustices that you see going on. There are people fighting in the background. There are judges fighting in the background. There are attorneys fighting in the background. All of that may not be shown in the mainstream media, but it is occurring. People are pushing back. So be encouraged. Stay in a right mind. Don't let these people, don't let what they're doing harden you, right? And don't become what you see when it comes to their lack of empathy, their lack of compassion. Um, don't become that. Don't become that. And so that's the encouragement I take away from hearing Merle Evers' words today is that she
Mm-hmm.
is still empowered to know that this is not right. We have to continue to resist as long as we are here. I know people, like she said, I'm weary, but I'm not going to stop resisting evil when it comes and when I see it. Final thoughts.
Well, you said it. Let's not stop fighting. Resist. Evil can only prosper in the absence of good standing up.
Mm-hmm.
See? So we have to keep fighting. We have to keep resisting. And in the end game, resistance usually wins, especially when it's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm going to end with this. The people united will never be defeated. So let's continue to stay in the vein of being united. I want to thank you all for your time and attention. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I've been your host today, Shantae Charles. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness. So continue to go out and be what?
Light.
Light. Take care, everyone. Be well, and most importantly,